Welcome back to We the Govern. My name is Glenn Morgan, and once again, this has been a part two. If you haven't seen the first interview here, please make sure you check that out. It's easy to find on the We the Govern channel. However, again, I'm just happy to be here with Brian Heywood, the guy behind Let's Go Washington, who has made so much of this happen. And we're going to be talking about 4 initiatives that will help reduce the cost of living for you in Washington State. So Brian, thank you so much again for coming in the studio for that and talking about this issue. And I want to go right into it. The last video we talked a little bit about initiatives of the legislature and how it works. And if people didn't see that, they can go back and look at it. Let's just get into these 4 topics, because anybody who's experienced the cost of living at the grocery store or filling up the gas station or just living life, especially if you have kids or you've got a bigger family, you know that this is, and you've already been living close to your means, this is not making life easier. And I love these initiatives. I think these are the ones that are going to have a direct impact on every single person in the state. Let's talk first about 2117, the Stop the Hidden Gas Tax.
This is a sneaky tax. It's a carbon tax credit, it kind of is the way they've said it, which nobody really knows exactly what that means and who gets the credit and who's paying the credit, and it's behind the scenes and it doesn't get reflected directly at the pump. In fact, they're not able to track it at the pump. This was
on purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah.
I believe absolutely on purpose.
Yep.
To make it hard to understand what the impact was. Mm-hmm. Jay Inslee, when he was signing this, said, "Oh, it'll be pennies."
Right.
But we're not going to allow any way to figure out what exactly the impact is going to be. The think tanks all went and started looking at this, saying, "Well, if this happens and this happens," and they dove into it. And it really took a bunch of really smart people to look through the whole supply system to understand where the flow is going to be, where the impact is going to be. And they estimated it would be in the mid 40 cents per gallon shortly, maybe going up as high as $1 later on as the tax credits roll through.
Right.
And as you've seen, anybody that's driving a car to work every day knows that their price of gas has gone up, and the estimates are now that it's around 44 to 45 cents per gallon.
Which is pretty close.
Just since January.
Yeah.
And it's like a penny off of what the think tanks were estimating that it would be. And it's about 43 pennies off of what Jay Inslee was suggesting that it would be.
And it puts us right up there as one of the most expensive places.
We are the highest gas in the nation.
Right.
We're higher than California and we're higher than Hawaii.
Yeah.
And Hawaii has to import everything.
Right.
For us to be on the coast and have the highest gas prices in the nation is ridiculous. It tells you this was done on purpose, I believe. And the reason I say it was done on purpose, I don't think they were honest with the voters. What they should have said is, we don't like gasoline cars. We don't like the selling of gasoline. We'd like to make it so expensive that you can't afford to do it anymore, so we're going to do this carbon tax scheme.
Right.
If they would have said that, that would have been an honest conversation with the voting public. Instead, they said, well, it's going to save children and the environment and baby seals, and therefore you need to do it, but it won't cost you anything. It was a big, big lie.
Right.
And if you're driving every day from Edmonds or from Enumclaw or wherever, 50 cents a gallon is a big hit on you every week.
It adds up a lot.
And it wasn't in your budget, and it's an unexpected spike in the prices. And then they have the temerity to go online and say, oh, it's just because the oil companies are greedy.
Right.
Well, who's greedy? It's the state government that has been greedily trying to get this money, and who knows where it goes.
Right.
At least with the gas tax, which I think is still high in the state, there's an earmark for that gas tax. It's supposed to go to roads and infrastructure, right?
At least in theory, the government does something with that money.
In theory, it's supposed to.
Because this money is just kept, it's in the secret
in a secret pocket somewhere.
Right, of somebody. You know, Inslee's friends, his donors,
Who knows?
Whoever.
Who knows?
Now, what does 2117 specifically do? It says stop the hidden gas tax. How does it work?
It repeals the carbon tax. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So, which kind of leads us into the next one, which is 2124, and this is the state long-term care fund. Basically, this allows people to opt out of the state long-term care tax. Tell our listeners about the kind of ugly story behind how this got here.
Well, so 2 years ago, they passed this Long-Term Care Act, and as the details began to roll out, everyone began to understand this is not good.
Right.
Not good because it's a failure on its face, and it had a whole bunch of exemptions and flaws in it. If you don't live in the state for 10 years, you don't get anything. If you move in between now and the next 10 years, you'll pay into it, but you get nothing, you get no credit, you just don't get any benefit. If you die before then, if you get sick before then, you get nothing. You're just paying into this thing for 10 years with no return. But then let's say we get to the 10 years, the benefit it gives you is about $36,000 maximum.
Right.
And my father just passed away in January, and he was in a sort of an average care home, and it was easily busting us over $10,000 a month just to have him there. So that means you've got 3.5 months of care.
Right.
That's not long-term care.
Right.
That's short-term care when you really need something. If you need it. There's a lot of people that won't need this.
Right.
So the sort of hope is we can fleece these other people, but you're still not giving enough that gives it.
Yeah, so it's a long-term price for a short-term return that probably won't be worth anywhere
Will
near.
not be worth it.
Right.
And the thing that I'm most amazed at is that if I went out as a financial company and set up this product and sold it in the market, I think Bob Ferguson, as Attorney General, would come and sue me for fraud.
Right. I think almost any Attorney General would.
It would be, it's amazing that this is allowed, that the state is able to put this out there, this fraudulent product.
And this basically comes out of everybody's paycheck every month. There's a way you could opt out. It was a very short window of time.
Yes, and that's the sneaky thing they did. There was
Right.
so much blowback when they first published this.
Right.
And it was supposed to go into effect a couple of years ago.
Right.
There was so much blowback that they said, "Oh, wait, we're gonna hold off."
Right.
And then quietly, without any fanfare, it was kicked down the road 2 years to July 1st, 2023. So a couple of weeks ago,
Right.
it suddenly went into place. You're going to start seeing it in your tax, in your pay stub. Either it depends on if you're weekly or monthly in your pay.
Right.
You're going to start seeing it right now or in another couple of weeks. This money's just suddenly going out that you hadn't budgeted.
And that you won't get anything
And
back.
you're not going to get it back for 10 years and maybe even not then.
Right.
And so that to me is deceptive as well. There was they hatred of this tax. There was massive blowback, and they just kicked it down the road and hit it, and now it sneakily comes back. So they can keep the tax if they want. I think it's a terrible tax. We're just saying you should have a right to opt out if you don't want that care. If you'd rather get something for yourself or you'd rather not get something at all, you have a right to opt out.
And this just allows the average citizen
That's right.
who they can say, listen, I don't want to pay this tax. I don't think it's a good deal for me, and they can say no.
That's right.
Okay, so it's just giving them a choice.
It is.
It's a classic pro-choice sort of bill, right? Gives the citizen the choice
Perfect,
to
yes.
either take that tax or not.
That's right.
Which leads us then to the next one, the third of the four bills here that really help reduce the cost of living. This is the repeal the capital gains tax. So tell our listeners about that one.
So capital gains tax is one of those that the game that's played is, this only affects rich people. And in the tax, in this state, we haven't ever had a capital gains tax. Anytime they've tried to deploy one through legislative means or through a ballot, through a ballot, it's been soundly rejected by the public.
Right.
It's the pitch that they've made to everybody is, don't worry, it won't affect you. It's only gonna hit the rich people.
Right.
Now, our Constitution doesn't say you can't tax income. It says you can't tax one group more than another group. You have to tax basically a flat tax.
Right.
So with this capital gains tax, they essentially were breaking that rule.
Right.
And the Supreme Court, but they said, well, it's not an income tax, it's an excise tax.
Right. Right.
Which is sort of like a sales tax in a way.
Right.
And that's how they sort of tried to skirt around this. And despite 49 other states defining, and the IRS,
yep.
and almost every country in the world defining capital gains as an income tax, somehow our Supreme Court, in their superior wisdom, supreme wisdom, say.
Infinite wisdom.
But at least supreme wisdom, right? They decided that this was not an income tax, that it was an excise tax, and therefore they were able to skirt the Washington Constitution with it.
Right.
And so then part of what the designers of the original legislation did was they gave a $250,000 exemption. Okay, so that's only rich people that are going to be getting that much money in.
Right.
And they set the tax rate at 7%. Only going to hit rich people. It's 7%. They'll never miss it. The problem with that is that, I know personally, I have a good friend in Seattle. His wife is a Korean immigrant. She's fantastic, talented, just started her own business. It's going to blast her. People came here because there's no capital gains tax. In fact, if we back up, the reason Facebook and Amazon and Boeing and Microsoft are here, one of the big draws for them was that there was no state income tax and no capital gains tax. And then all around these, there's a huge innovative group of companies, small companies that were started, and the employees make less than they might make somewhere else with this idea that I'm going to get stock options. And if we go big, if I work my rear end off and we're successful, I get this big payout and the state's not taking a chunk out of it. It makes Washington State extremely attractive for startups.
Without the capital gains.
Without the capital gains. With the capital gains, it's basically saying, we don't want you to come here, or if you do, we're going to penalize you by taking a chunk of anything that you think you've deserved.
And I know already, even after it was passed, and it hasn't really been implemented that solidly yet, but they're already talking about increasing the percentage and reducing that $250,000 amount down lower.
There was a legislative balloon that was floated. They never voted on it, but it was floated to, I believe, basically double the rate to 14% and to reduce the $250,000 deduction down to $50,000.
Which pretty much hits anybody who sells a home or
has any stock options.
Right.
And the other thing that we don't talk about is the small business owner.
Right.
I've got a friend who's a butcher. He's been doing this for his whole life. He took almost no vacations. He's been saving up. He's been scrimping. Everything's gone into this business. He's going to have, at some point he wants to sell it and give the money to his grandkids and help pay for their college and sort of enjoy the fruits of what he's done. And this goes right in and just takes it takes at least one or two grandkids worth of money out of his pockets.
Right.
And so this isn't just hitting rich people. This is hitting people who have saved and invested and worked. It hits young, entrepreneurial, excited people who want to go make a change in the world and create the next Amazon or whatever the innovative thing that's coming out of Seattle area,
Right.
We're just telling them, no, don't bother coming here. We're going to make it unfriendly for you.
And then that leads us into Initiative 2111, so 2111, and this is the no state income tax. So tell our listeners why this one is necessary right now.
So this is preemptive, right? Right now there's no state income tax, and this is saying you can't tax it. But what we saw with the capital gains tax was and they've been trying for years to find some way to beat the Constitution of Washington State and to get around the voters who have multiple times rejected any kind of income tax. And they use the excise tax as a way to do it. They redefined it. And already what you'll see is within cities and counties, they're looking at, can we use excise as a way to get income tax? What this initiative does is it uses the definition of the IRS. It uses the actual IRS code, which defines what income is. And the IRS is very effective at defining personal income, right? Because they want to collect all they can. So we use their definition. It actually refers to that code and says, if the IRS considers it, and the word the IRS uses in their code is gross income. And within gross income, here's the things. The IRS lists out all these items that are gross income. If it's gross income, the city, county, and state may not tax it. Right? So it doesn't hit payroll taxes. It doesn't hit B&O tax. Those are still on the shelf.
Or sales tax.
But it preemptively prevents the state from stepping in and taking a chunk out.
I know the way I view these is that both the 2109 and the 2111 really are essentially reinforcing the constitutional definition that everybody has commonly recognized for a long time in Washington State. But I think it's very good about reducing the cost of living so people don't have bad actors on the government side taking a lot more of their money. And I think these are all great initiatives that really do improve the cost of living for the average person in Washington State. Is there anything else you want our listeners to know about these initiatives?
I want them to know they can get involved. Right? If any of these appeal to you, you can volunteer. We'll talk, I think, a little bit later, but you can also go on letsgowa.com. There's no apostrophe on that, letsgowa.com. You can get initiatives and take them to your neighbors. It's a great way to break the ice. I found people that they have a Democrat or a Republican neighbor and they don't talk one way or the other. And these are a great way to go talk to them and find common ground, because the lines are so divided on the political parties that we suddenly don't talk to people. But these are ideas that seem to have we did a poll beforehand and we had sort of high 70s, 80% support on all the initiatives that we're running with.
Across the board, doesn't matter what party affiliation,
and so it's a way to talk to your neighbor and find their support. But if you want to do it as a job, we've also got paid positions for people gathering signatures.
Okay, letsgowa.com.
Letsgowa.com.
Letsgowa.com. All right, if you want to know more about these initiatives, go to letsgowa.com. And I hope this has been educational for anybody who wants to know what these initiatives are. You're going to see people out there collecting signatures. Get involved, sign it yourself, and also get a copy and get your neighbors to sign, everybody you know. We got to get these turned in by December. I think it'll be a great improvement for living in Washington if we can get these in the system, and you can vote on them in 2024. So if you want to learn more about the first discussion on several of the other initiatives, make sure you go to part 1 down below. Brian, thank you so much for being in the studio with us to talk about this kind of thing. And with that...
well, then let's one thing that we want to remind them is that if you go to Let's Go Wa, you can also find locations where you can go and sign right now.
Correct. Okay.
It has a list of locations that are permanent locations.
Okay.
Stores or where we're collecting signatures. Right now, at this moment, you can go to the King County Fair, and we've got a booth there, and they can go sign up there as well.
And the Puyallup Fair in the future coming up. And,
yes.
Yep. And so make sure you get those initiatives signed if you support this idea of reducing your cost of living in Washington State, and who doesn't. And make sure that you share this information with others. And just want to remind people that you can't just sit at home and expect the world to change just because you want it to. You have to get involved, because the future belongs to those who show up.